It's the 1960s, the generation of love. It's the time of freedom and revolution. Rock music came to the forefront of society. Hendrix, Morrison, Joplin. Society was changing, but it wasn't just a counterculture of sex and drugs. It was a counterculture in how people would be able to live their lives, what bathrooms they could use, where they could sit on the bus, what school they sat an exam in. This decade was a special decade, perhaps to the likes we have not seen since. Whether it was the times or just the growth of media, it feels like the first time any man or woman off the street could be another log on the fire for change. We had Dorothy Counts fighting for education. We saw the Black Panthers rise. And speaking of that, Angela Davis standing and defending herself in the court, facing 3 capital felonies. Whilst not in the 60s, it very much feels like a correlation. And ultimately, we saw the rise of figures such as Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, figures which have yet to fall. Though what I'm speaking about today is not a topic which can only be found in the 60s, rather is a teaching which should be at the forefront of the fight for inequality, no matter the fight. It's a teaching and philosophy which has been misunderstood and mistread by so many in history, whilst being perhaps the most prescribed teaching of all. It's one which our mothers teach us growing up. It is simply to turn the other cheek. A teaching and philosophy which Martin Luther King embodies all too perfectly. Just a few months ago, I was studying for my religious studies exam, and my tutor came one evening to study the ethics side of my course, which included the civil rights movement, specifically Martin Luther King. This subject required own knowledge, which wasn't given to us in the textbook, so my tutor began to ramble, as he always did, about something which was rather off topic. But what he would begin to speak of was the parable of Turn the Other Cheek. It was one I felt rather familiar with, though by the end, I was so interested in this teaching. What my tutor explained was that at the time of the Bible being written, to turn the other cheek did not mean to just open yourself up to be further harmed, to be a passive resistant just accepting one's fate. No, at the time to be struck with the back of one's hand put that person below their fellow citizen, and so would often be used by slave owners or those in higher society as a way to shame those at the bottom. So by turning the other cheek, you make it impossible for the person to hit you with the back of their right hand, which means they must either hit you with a fist, which puts you on their level, or not hit you at all, stopping the oppression. This is what Martin Luther King did to his oppressors. He symbolically turned the other cheek to his and his fellow man's oppressors. King, in an interview, was questioned on whether he ever saw a time in which people were under such duress that violence was the answer. He said no, but the interviewer continued with Gandhi's belief, someone who was a peaceful protester, who said the only alternative to fear is violence, and that if that was the only alternative, he would choose violence. King, however, disputed this, saying that there are 3 ways in which a person or persons can fight against oppression. The first is to rise up with physical violence, in which King explained to be a method which creates more social problems than it solves. The second is non-cooperation, in which King explains passive resistance, if doing nothing, is not non-violence. It is rather aiding with no benefit to anything. The third, and what he practices, is non-violence organised resistance, which he believed to be the best weapon for the oppressed. It is using solidarity in numbers, keeping faith and showing resistance to oppression through the power of people coming together. This is where Turn the Other Cheek comes in. King perfectly explains what the true interpretation of this teaching is. It is not to be held down and beaten by your enemy. It is to show them that you are the strong, the brave, the person who deserves the respect of their compatriots, not because you are the physical dominator, but because you are the stronger human being, the stronger character. Luther said this when speaking of Turn the Other Cheek. I think it is positive, definitely if it is used properly and accepted with a proper attitude. It is the method of the strongman. In that last quote, which I've just read, I feel it shows the precise meaning of to turn the other cheek. It shows how humanity must act to reach the goal we all seek. Many see this teaching as a way to say that you should not be dangerous or a threat if you are to be good. I feel this to be the biggest misjudgment in the hunt for what is good. It is not good to be passive, as those who are being bullied lie on the floor as you are safe on the other side of the playground. It isn't good to allow evil to manifest in front of your eyes. It isn't good for your society to be corrupt and broken whilst you sit in the comfort of your home reading a book. That is not good. To be good means to be strong, to stand up for what you believe in, and to treat others with the good that you wished that they would bestow upon you. What we must do is show faith in the community, By coming together through talking, discussing, disputing, we must take action for ourselves and our community. We must seek to create a greater world. Thank you.